Okay, and here's the last video for section 4, finding the zeros of a function when given one of the zeros. So given that the polynomial function has a given 0, find the other zeros. So they gave you 1. Now you have many different choices you can use. You can use long division, synthetic division, but you have to somehow get these factors down if you want. You can even factor this down. I would use synthetic division on this one. So a little reminder on synthetic division, this one goes on the outside. And then you take the coefficients. Power of 3 means I need 4 terms, and I have 4 terms. So this is 1, negative 1, 1, negative 1. Bring down the first 1, and 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0, 1, 1, 0. Remember, this was remainder, constant, x squared. So we have x squared plus 1 equals 0. So x squared equals negative 1. Square root both sides. So x equals positive or negative, and the square root of negative 1 is I. So your other two zeros are imaginary, I and negative I and 1. Okay, next problem is the same way. Given the polynomial function has a given zeros, find the other zeros. They gave you 2i this time, which means if 2i is a 0, then negative 2i is a 0. That leaves us with 2 more. So if x equals 2i, then x squared equals 4i squared. Square both sides. But this is negative, so x squared equals negative 4. Move the negative 4 over, I get x squared plus 4. Now remember, I said to do synthetic division. When you do synthetic division, you have to have a power of 1. This is a power of 2. And synthetic division with i's is not pretty. So we'll do long division on this one. So we have x squared plus 4 is my divisor. And that's from this. And I'm missing a bunch of terms in between. X to the 4th plus 0x cubed plus 0x squared plus 0x minus 16. Don't think we need all the terms because I've got them missing over here as well. Remember, it's all about the first term. So I can do my side work. X to the 4th over x squared gives me x squared. And then x squared times x squared plus 4 gives me x to the 4th and 4x squared. Subtract here, those disappear. That's 0, so I don't have to worry about it. Subtract here, I get negative 4x squared. And most likely I'm not going to leave, but I'm going to bring both of these guys down. Plus 0x minus 16. Okay, again, leading term, negative 4x squared divided by x squared is just negative 4. So minus 4. So negative 4 times x squared plus 4 gives me negative 4x squared minus 16. Subtract, get those cancel, subtract, and those cancel, and you get a remainder of 0. So you have x squared minus 4 equals 0, because remember, we're looking for the other zeros. So x squared equals 4, so x equals plus or minus 2, because you have to square root these. So all of them, so you got 2i, negative 2i, and then plus or minus 2. Okay. Okay, and then finding rational zeros of a function without a given zero. So now you have to figure out, use all of these skills that they've given you on how to find zeros. Use your synthetic division, your factoring, everything else. So all coefficients must be integers, so no fractions can be in there. Take the factors of the constant and divide it by the factors of the leading coefficient. These two numbers must not have common factors besides 1 and -1. What's going to happen is anything that repeats, you're just going to throw it out, or throw out the repeated version. The results are the possible zeros. You will need to check them to verify if they are zeros or not. So the first problem, they just ask you to list all of the possible zeros. That's all you're going to do is list them. So our constant is 9, so our factors are 1, 3, and 9. And 3, the factors of 3 are 1 and 3. Now, when they were saying they could have nothing in common but 1, it's just, you're going to get a repeated possible zero. So I'm going to take 1, 3, and 9 are in there. 1, 3, 9, because if I divide by 1, that's what I get. If I have 3, and I divide it by 1, actually I don't need to divide by 1 anymore. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1, but I already have it, so I don't need to worry about him. And then I have 9. If I divide him by 3, I get 3. And already over here. So not a possible factor. And so all I have left is to do a plus or minus on these. So I have to list all the possible zeros. I have 6 possible zeros on that one. Nothing like realizing you made a mistake first. I forgot about the 1. I was looking going, I'm missing something. I'm missing something. I forgot about the 1. If I take 1 and divide it by 3, I don't have that one. So the only other one I forgot was the 1/3 plus or minus. So really there are 8 possible zeros on this one. Okay, so getting down to business, find the rational zeros, and then the other zeros, that is, solve f of x equals 0. Factor f of x into linear factors. So even if you find an imaginary or something, you have to go. So part A is going to be the difficult part. We can go through and list all of our possible zeros. I have 3 and 1. My factors are 3 and 1. The only factors of 1 is 1. So my possible zeros are 1, positive or negative 1, positive or negative 3. Now this guy is positive, which doesn't help you any because 2 negatives will get you to the positive and 2 positives will get you there. So you attempt things. You can use synthetic division and test these. Or if your factoring skills are up to date, you can try and factor. I'm going to try and factor this one out because it looks good. Now you're going, how do I know? Because these two have the same coefficients and these two have the same coefficients. So if I split this in half, common factor is x squared. Actually, let's go back. I reread the directions and they're wanting you to use the rational zero thing. So they really kind of want you to test these. And since I don't know what it is right offhand, let's try a negative. 3's got to be in the mix somewhere. Let's go with 3. So I have leading coefficients, or my coefficients are 1, -1, -3, and 3. Bring down the 1, multiply here, I get 3. Here I get 2. This gives me 6. This will give me 3. And I see very quickly 3 is not going to work for me. Let's go with 1. Actually, a 3 has to be in there somewhere, so let's go with the -3. 1, -1, -3, 3. So I get 1, negative 3 gives me negative 4, which gives me negative 12, which gives me negative 15, and we can see that this is working even worse. Okay, we continue on. Is negative 1. Now, if nothing else, you're seeing that it's a trial and error thing. Sometimes you'll be lucky and you'll get it the first time. Sometimes you will not. So this is going to give me negative 1, which is going to give me negative 2, and I'm already feeling bad about this, which is going to give me positive 2, which is going to give me negative 1, which is going to give me positive 1, when you know I go through all 4 of them before I found it. 1, negative 1, negative 3, 3. 1, 1, 0, 0, negative 3, negative 3, 0. Remainder, constant, x squared. So x squared minus 3 equals 0. Now remember, this part that I was doing here, find the rational zeros and then the other zeros, that is solve f(x) equals 0. These are only possible zeros. And you're only going to get 3. And one of the things to know how these break out is remember your radicals and your imaginaries come in pairs. So as I was going through this, like when these 3's didn't work out, I knew at that point a radical 3 had to be in the mix. So I got down to x squared minus 3. So I have x equals 1 is a 0, and I have x squared minus 3 equals 0. I need to solve this. X squared equals 3, so x equals plus or minus radical 3. Don't forget you have to square root. Now, this is all part A. I think this is all part A. Yeah, find all the zero. Factor f of x into linear factors. So they just want you to write it all out as linear factors. So this is going to give us x minus 1, and this is going to give me x, well actually this one is going to give me x plus radical 3 and x minus radical 3. So part B, f of x equals x minus 1 times x plus radical 3 times x minus radical 3. You should, whatever the degree is, that's how many sets of parentheses you should have. If you have a degree of 4 and you only have 3 sets of parentheses, you're missing one. Or you combine 2 and that's not what they ask you to do. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so on this one, I have 1 and 2, but my other guy has 1 and 3. So 1 and 2 are possible zeros. And then if I divide by 3, I also get 1/3 and 1/2 plus or minus. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I should look at my notes so we can start faster. I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, we're going to start with negative 1. So, and my leading my coefficients, 3, negative 4, 1, 6, and negative 2. Bring the 3 down, we get negative 3. That's negative 7. Those together give me positive 7. Add down, we get 8. These two give me negative 8. That gives me negative 2. And negative 2 and negative 1 is positive 2, which gives me a remainder of 0. Okay, now I don't have to write out the next one. I just now know that x equals negative 1 is one of my factors. I got to get that 3 in there somewhere. I know the 3 is in there somewhere. So there's my new ones. You're not going to use the 0 of the remainder as part of your work. But I don't have, what I'm trying to say is I don't have to come back to this guy. I found a factor, it's -1, and it gave me this new factor. Now I'm going to use my remaining values, and -2 and 3 are still in the front and the back, so any of those values are still doable. So let's go with 1/3. We know 3's in there somewhere, 1/3. So I'm going to try this one again, this time with 1/3. Bring down the 3, I get 3, and 3 times 1/3 gives me 1. -7 and 1 is -6. This is good so far. We want to be able to get rid of that fraction. -6 divided by 3 is -2. Bring this down and we get 6. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And we get the remainder of 0. So now we have x equals 1/3 is a 0. Now we got to talk about this though. This guy was divided by 3, but he was divided by 3. We actually have to divide the 3 off of these guys. Reminder, you would multiply by 3, so this is really 3x equals 1. I need to remove that common factor here of 3 now. So I've got 1, -2, and 2. And then I got to remind you on this one, this is the remainder constant x squared. So I'm down to, after all of that, I found 2 of my 4 zeros. I'm left with x squared minus 2x plus 2. You get to this point, you should be factoring or looking to see if you can factor. Factors of 2 that will get me 2, there are none. So we have to go to the quadratic formula. Okay, so at this point here, I have in my notes to do the rest in class. Because I have a feeling I'm going to have questions. Okay, so we're going to do the rest of this one in class. Okay, now that's the end of the notes. Now what I need to throw out there is this is your full assignment. And you can see there's a lot of problems here. Up to today, those are the problems you've been assigned. These are the problems you're being assigned now. And this does still come out to be, a good chunk of problems. I think I've 15 I've already assigned, and I think there's 21 or 22 total. So this is like 7 more problems. So, but this is the end of section 4. Good luck.